So this, good readers, is the Salomon SickStick 151, and it's kind of a board unto itself when you compare it to the 57 and the 62. It's not a smaller board for people with, let's say, smaller feet or maybe a little shorter, a little lighter, like a lot of boards are in the spectrum of sizing. This actually works with like almost the same specs as you know, the 57 and 62. It's you know, in that short fat world where, you know, it's not truly like surfy, but it's short and fat and kind of all mountainy, and that's great. You know, it does this kind of like really cool thing where, yes, you can see like the tip and the tail are different shapes, and they call this, I think they call it a tapered directional twin, which is just weird. You know, you don't hear that much, and it's kind of an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense until you ride it, and then you realize, okay, so there's 10 mil of taper here. Usually at 10 mil of taper, usually sometimes even less. You know, you compare this to many free ride boards that we love, like the XV that has like 8 mil of taper or something like that. You know, you compare it to the Yes Pick Your Line that has like 6 mil of taper, and you compare it to many other boards that have like 10 mil of taper, and you're like, wow, this really feels good. It's a lot like the Burton Flight Attendant, where it just doesn't feel quite as tapered as you would think. But it's short and it's fat, so that's why we kind of put it in that short, fat, surfy category, and I made my own review of this because it's just so different. And you can take it either way. You can ride this centered, you can ride this set all the way back, and it does a lot for you. So, you know, you've got 6 inserts, which is good. And then, you know, because I believe the first call only has 5x2 instead of 6x2, so you can get a little further back with this board. You can see it's got a nice bow of camber. It's not massive, but it's very noticeable, and you can see kind of like right about here and about here is where the camber kind of stops and starts to slowly, in a mellow way, transition back up to rocker. And I really like that. I like that, that kind of feel where it's kind of almost a mostly camber ride. But when weighted down, you can see it lifts up right about where I'm talking about, like right along here. And there is some additional float, and it's not totally catchy and aggressive like full camber. So it's got a little bit of that playful thing going on for it. So, you know, you can see there's definitely more nose than the tail, but it really rides well. So let's get into, it really rides well switch, that's what I meant to say, but it also rides really well. I'd say probably the one drawback is just uneven terrain. It's not terrible compared to some Salomon boards that can just punish you when you get into those micro bumps and like those hard groomers that are super chattery. This doesn't do it that bad, but if you're comparing this to the first call and you ride a lot of uneven terrain, then you're definitely, you should definitely consider the first call. However, where this isn't ideal in uneven terrain, it really makes up for it in just liveliness, poppiness, just the way it shines on good groomers. There's just more dynamic feel underfoot. But when you look at the centered stance, you're looking at 21. But when set all the way back, you're looking at 22. And which is very doable for most people. And then you're looking at 21 1/4, just about. And then just about 15 1/4. So you're looking at 6 inches back on board, which is not a massive amount, but a lot more than you would think. After we rode this in powder, you would have thought it had less setback on board, which is kind of interesting because usually a board like this floats super well, but this felt really double-ender. And you start to get that tapered directional twin kind of description like they talked about. But still, when it's set all the way back, you can get some pretty good directional float, even with that mellow bit of early rise. And center this up and ride this switch and carve and get air, go hit kickers. You can even ride the pipe pretty well with this. This turns really fast for what it is. And then you've got this cool, like, you know, black and white base that I like, but I don't like at the same time because this is all die cut. And that's hard to repair when it's black and white like that. But it's a fast base and it's well done. What I love about Salomon's edges is they come out detuned, ready to ride out of the factory, which is really cool. And there's also this kind of like quadratic side cut. It's not like what's their other one? Name escapes me right now, but it's not like the equalizer side cut that's really noticeable. You can really see the curves in this. But if you lay this out, let's see if I can do this here and get the autofocus to come into play. You can see there's a subtle play on side cut, and there definitely are multiple radiuses, and it definitely does help with the edge hold. So that's kind of cool. But all in all, I mean, the SickStick just really does a good thing. Not much has changed from this year to last year. You know, the 18 model and the 19 model are the same, and we've been on both of them. Like the Camber profiles are almost identical. Everything about the board was made really well in comparing two different 151s. 51 from 18 and a 51 from 19. They both seem almost exactly the same. They both rode almost exactly the same. And it's just one of those kind of boards that we call short fat. It's not that surfy, but it can get a little surfy when set all the way back. But it's a great board for somebody looking for a short fatty that wants a kind of a one board short fatty quiver. And that's what I love about this Salomon SickStick 151. It really can hold a good edge. It can ride switch really well for what it is. You can set it back and get directional float in powder, or ride it centered and have fun in powder. It's a little more work off the back leg than your average short fatty, but it sure is fun. And it's not one of those boards that you put away on groomers. It shines on groomers. It carves well. It pops well. It's a very fun, lively, kind of do anything board. You could even take a mountain freestyle approach to the day if you want to. And I think that's what makes this board so much fun. So there you have it. That's the Salomon SickStick 151.